Most individuals think they understand their personality. They believe with all their heart that they truly know who they are, their identity. But let me ask you this. When was the last time you paid deep attention to your behavior? The last time you stopped to reflect on your actions, thoughts, and emotions? It's hard, I know. In fact, it is even harder without templates that can guide you, for the only reason that you don't know what you're looking for. When people say, you should pay attention to how you think and behave, they never give you a template or guide of what to look for, and this is what makes it harder. For example, if you never knew your mother and someone told you your mother will be at the airport today at 12 and you should go and meet her, how would you recognize her if you never saw her face even in a picture? It would be hard and nearly impossible for you to identify her, right? It's literally the same with archetypes. They serve as templates, as patterns of behavior that can help you identify your personality, helping you easily identify who you are entirely. By the end of this video, you'll be able to determine what your dominant archetype is, and you will be surprised by all the things you thought you knew about yourself but didn't. Things that could have helped you be better and fulfilled. But before we go any further, let me welcome you to the Self-I channel, a place where we blend psychological, philosophical, and spiritual theories into digestible pieces that you can easily use to understand yourself better and improve your life. If that resonated with you, feel free to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on our videos. Back to our subject for today, let me tell you that these things called archetypes are a result of a study made by Carl Jung in 1919 after observing that all human beings, regardless of culture or personal experience, share certain patterns and symbols, and he called them archetypes. They are not here to label everyone, but serve as a template to help you identify who you are entirely. We all know a person being manifested by the first archetype. It is that person who always sees the good in everything and everyone. They're the type of person whose friends often have to remind them of what's really going on. Yet, they consistently view life through an optimistic lens. Why? Because deep down, they're searching for peace and security. It's their way of keeping things simple, a strategy to find joy in life. But this relentless optimism comes at a cost. They miss out on the true reality of what's happening around them. It might seem naive, but it's not. It's the fear of abandonment and the need for security, manifesting as an avoidance of anything unpleasant. So, what does someone like this do? Instead of confronting life's complexities, they distract themselves, maybe by excessive shopping, indulging in sugary treats, or endlessly scrolling through social media. Anything to maintain the facade of happiness. They might even make excuses for a loved one's bad behavior, minimizing red flags, convincing themselves that it's not that bad. This is a form of self-protection, but it also prevents them from addressing the real issues in the relationship. It's as if they're so afraid of rocking the boat, even if that means going down with it. This highlights the vital importance of setting healthy boundaries, even for those with the most innocent hearts. The takeaway here? It's about finding the balance between optimism and being grounded in reality. Facing those difficult emotions doesn't diminish your goodness or your inherent light. In fact, it strengthens it. Now let's shift gears a bit, shall we? From sunshine and rainbows to maybe a bit more grit. Next up, we've got the Orphan. As we move from the world of the innocent to our next archetype, we encounter a personality type that we're all familiar with in modern society. The Orphan archetype is defined by a deep desire for connection and belonging. When this connection isn't found, these individuals rely on themselves, forging an incredible resilience and resourcefulness. They're the survivors, the ones who know how to dust themselves off and keep going, no matter what life throws their way. They value independence deeply, and they have a remarkable capacity for empathy, especially for others who are struggling. But when those survival instincts go a little sideways, this type of person can become addicted to powerlessness. Instead of drawing strength from their past resilience, they get stuck. It becomes a cycle of blaming, complaining, and focusing on the negative as if they're waiting for the other shoe to drop, almost inviting misfortune into their lives. Sadly, this can turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. They might even sabotage their own success because deep down, they believe they don't deserve happiness or fulfillment. It's heartbreaking, but it shows how easily our strengths can turn into weaknesses if we're not careful. For the Orphan, It's all about finding that balance. The key is recognizing when that tough outer shell, that cynicism, is taking over. Finding balance starts with reframing their story. It's about shifting their internal narrative from "I'm a victim" to "I'm a survivor." It's about realizing that they have the power to write a new story for themselves. It's about remembering their past victories, their ability to overcome challenges, and focusing on their strengths, their resilience, independence, and compassion. They have so much to offer, and the most powerful thing you can do for the orphan in your life is to simply listen without judgment, offering that safe space for them to process and heal. So, listeners, if you're relating to this, if you see yourself in the orphan archetype, take a moment. What narratives are you holding on to? Are they empowering you or are they holding you back? You have the strength within you to rewrite that story. It's so easy to get stuck in those old stories. Let's break free. Speaking of rewriting narratives, that brings to mind our next archetype, the warrior. These are the people who charge headfirst into challenges, always ready to fight for what they believe in. The warrior is driven by a thirst for victory, for proving their strength by overcoming obstacles. Their approach to problems is very direct, with no room for second guessing. The warrior's playbook screams, "I'm not afraid of a challenge, bring it on!" And that energy can be incredibly inspiring, right? The world needs people who are willing to take a stand, fight for what's right, and push through barriers. The warrior's courage and discipline are invaluable. They not only push themselves, but often inspire those around them to strive for greatness too. But when that drive for victory goes unchecked, the warrior's fear of weakness comes to the surface. And this isn't just about physical weakness, it's about any perceived vulnerability, whether in themselves or others. This fear can show up as aggression, but it can also be more subtle. For example, they might stay in a job they hate, even if it's crushing their soul, simply because quitting feels like admitting defeat. Or they might push loved ones away because letting people in feels too risky, too exposing. It's like they're building walls instead of bridges, even if it means isolating themselves in the process. This is what's known as the warrior's addictive quality of stoicism. They suppress their emotions, burying them under a mask of strength and indifference. It's tempting, especially in a world that often rewards stoicism and views vulnerability as weakness. But bottling everything up isn't healthy, right? It's a recipe for burnout and resentment. This emotional suppression often goes hand in hand with an addiction to achievement. The warrior seeks external validation, racking up accomplishments as a way to prove their worth, to outrun that inner fear of not being good enough. So, it becomes less about the actual achievements and more about what they represent, a shield against vulnerability. For the warrior, it's crucial to remember that true strength lies in embracing the full spectrum of their humanity, vulnerabilities and all. It takes real courage to let your guard down, to allow yourself to be seen, and to ask for help when you need it. And for those who resonate with the warrior archetype, the challenge is to redefine what it means to be strong. It's not about winning every battle, but about choosing your battles wisely, knowing when to fight and when to surrender. So, listeners, if you're feeling that warrior energy within you, ask yourself, what battles are you fighting? Are they worth the cost? And more importantly, are you allowing yourself to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be human? Speaking of seeking, that brings us to our next archetype, the seeker. These are the free spirits, the adventurers, the ones who are always on a quest for knowledge, experience, and self-discovery. The seeker is driven by an insatiable curiosity and a deep yearning for authenticity. They're constantly asking, what if, and what's next? It's like they have an internal compass that's always pointing them toward uncharted territory. They bring that sense of adventure and boundless possibility into every room they enter. The seeker's greatest strength lies in their willingness to challenge the status quo, to question everything, and to forge their own path. They're not afraid to be different, to stand out from the crowd. And that can be incredibly inspiring, especially for those of us who are still trying to find our own way in life. But as with all archetypes, those strengths come with potential pitfalls. What happens when that need for exploration and individuality goes too far? Their fear of conformity can drive them, but when taken to an extreme, it can lead to a constant need to feel superior, separate, even at the expense of real, genuine connection. It's like they're so busy chasing the horizon that they miss the beauty of the landscape right in front of them. the connections that are waiting to be nurtured, here and now. This ties into the seeker's addictive quality of self-centeredness. They can become so consumed by their own journey, their own growth, that they forget about the needs and feelings of those around them. It's that classic lone wolf syndrome, right? They crave connection, but also fear it, often pushing away the very people who want to get close to them. It's a tricky balance. For the seeker, the challenge is to find that sweet spot between honoring their need for independence and cultivating meaningful, reciprocal relationships. It's about recognizing that true fulfillment often comes from sharing our adventures, our discoveries, and our vulnerabilities with others. Sometimes the greatest adventure of all is learning to open our hearts and let someone in, to allow ourselves to be truly known and loved for who we are. That's beautiful. So, listeners, if you're feeling that seeker spirit within you, take a moment to reflect. Are you honoring both your need for exploration and your need for connection? Are you allowing yourself to experience the joy of shared experiences? Well, now that we're talking about connection, let's dive into the archetype that's all about matters of the heart, the lover. The lover is driven by a deep capacity for passion, sensuality, and a longing for that blissful union of two souls. Think Romeo and Juliet. It's that first blush of romance, the feeling of truly being seen and cherished for who you are. But the lover goes beyond those cheesy, inspirational posters. There's a depth to their connection that's truly profound. The lover's strength lies in their ability to infuse every aspect of life with passion and beauty. Whether it's art, music, food, or relationships, they bring a vibrancy, an intensity that's contagious. They're the ones who remind us to slow down, savor the moment, and appreciate the simple pleasures in life. But their shadow side can be just as intense. Their fear of loss, especially the loss of love, becomes a major vulnerability. When that fear takes over, it can manifest as possessiveness, jealousy, and a desperate need for validation. It's like their entire world revolves around the object of their affection, and if that love is threatened in any way, their world comes crashing down. This ties into the lover's addictive quality of intimacy problems. They crave deep connection, but that fear of loss, of being abandoned or rejected, can sabotage their ability to create and sustain healthy relationships. It's like they're caught in a vicious cycle. They yearn for intimacy, but then they push people away out of fear of getting hurt. Often they'll turn to superficial connections or fleeting romances to avoid the vulnerability that comes with true intimacy. So, it's not really about the relationships themselves, it's about trying to fill an emptiness, a void within. Exactly. For the lover, the key is to cultivate self-love, to recognize their own inherent worthiness of love and belonging. Regardless of external validation, it's about understanding that true love begins within. Only when we truly love and accept ourselves can we create healthy, fulfilling relationships with others. For those who resonate with the lover archetype, the journey is about learning to love themselves as deeply as they love others. It's about setting healthy boundaries and embracing vulnerability as the pathway to true intimacy. Okay, listeners, does the lover archetype resonate with you? How do you balance your desire for connection with your need for independence? It's a lifelong dance, isn't it? Speaking of intensity, our next archetype is often misunderstood, even feared. It's the destroyer. But before you jump to conclusions, this isn't just about blowing things up. It's about radical transformation. The destroyer beautifully embodies the rage against outdated structures, but in doing so, it clears the path for new growth. It's about dismantling what no longer serves us to make way for something better. Think about those characters who shake things up, who challenge the system, even if it means ruffling a few feathers along the way. I'm picturing the revolutionaries, the rebels, the ones who aren't afraid to speak truth to power, even if it means risking everything. Their strength lies in their willingness to see what needs to change and to be fearless in the face of that change. But this archetype, more than any other, has a shadow side that can easily spiral out of control. Their fear of annihilation is a key factor here. It's like they're constantly running from their own inner demons, their own shadow, and that can manifest as reckless behavior, self-sabotage, and a blatant disregard for consequences. It's as if they'd rather burn everything down, including themselves, than face the uncomfortable truths lurking beneath the surface. And that's where their addictive quality of self-destructiveness comes into play. They might engage in risky behaviors, substance abuse, or even sabotage their own success as a way to numb the pain, to avoid confronting those deeper fears. So it's not really about a desire to harm others, but about this internal struggle, this war they're waging within themselves. For the destroyer, the key is to channel that intensity, that rage against the machine, into something constructive. So how do they do that? How does the destroyer find the balance between destruction and creation? It's about recognizing that their true power doesn't lie in just tearing things down, but in building something new and better in its place. It's about channeling that anger and frustration into art, activism, or any form of creative expression that allows them to make a positive impact on the world. It's about becoming a force for good, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to create a world that aligns with their values. For those who resonate with the destroyer archetype, the journey is about befriending their shadow side, integrating those destructive impulses, and ultimately using their power to heal, to transform, to create lasting change. Okay, listeners, if you're feeling that destroyer energy within you, what are you called to dismantle? What are you called to create? Remember, you have the power to be both a force of destruction and a force of creation. It's all about how you choose to wield that power. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. How much creative potential is actually hidden in those darker, misunderstood parts of ourselves. Speaking of creative energy, that brings us to a really exciting archetype, the creator. These are the artists, the innovators, the ones who see the world as one giant blank canvas, just waiting for them to unleash their vision. The creator is driven by this deep-seated need to bring something new into the world. It's about authentic self-expression and leaving their mark, however big or small. It's that powerful urge to create. And the beauty of it is that it can look like so many things, right? It's not just about painting masterpieces or writing the next great symphony. It's about that everyday creativity, that spark of ingenuity, the ability to look at something and think, I can make that better, or I can see a solution here, or even, I'm going to rearrange my furniture and create a whole new vibe. It's that very human drive to build something of ourselves, to leave the world a little brighter, a little more interesting than we found it. But like all our archetypes, there's a shadow side to all that creative energy too, and for the creator, it often comes from their fear of inauthenticity. They have this deep need to be true to themselves, to express their vision without compromise. But that can easily tip over into an obsession with perfection. The fear of not being good enough, not original enough. They get stuck comparing themselves to everyone else, measuring their worth by these external standards instead of trusting their own inner voice, their own instincts. Yes, and that's where the creator's addictive quality, obsessiveness, comes into play. They get so caught up in the details, in chasing that elusive masterpiece, that they lose sight of the joy of the creative process itself. It's the classic image of the tortured artist holed up in their studio, neglecting everything, their health, their relationships, all in the relentless pursuit of their art. And that's why finding balance is so essential for the creator. Their well-being matters just as much as their art. It's about finding those moments of joy in everyday life, connecting with loved ones, savoring the simple pleasures that make it all worthwhile. It's about remembering that creativity flows best when we're not forcing it, when we're present and inspired by the world around us, trusting that the muse will show up when we create the space for it. And if you resonate with the creator archetype, your journey is about surrendering to the creative process, embracing the imperfections, and trusting that your voice, your vision, is more than enough, just as it is. Okay, listeners, how do you nurture your own creativity? What brings you joy? What makes you come alive? Because here's the thing, creativity isn't a luxury reserved for a select few. It's in all of us. It's a birthright, a vital force. It's about tapping into that wellspring within yourself. Now that we're all feeling inspired and energized, let's talk about the archetype that brings a little order to all that creative chaos, the ruler. The ruler is driven by a deep desire for structure, for control, creating order in a world that often feels anything. They see the big picture, they delegate, they make those tough calls that no one else wants to make. And that's incredibly valuable, especially when everything around us feels uncertain. The ruler embodies that impulse to build, to establish, to create systems, not just for themselves, but for the benefit of everyone. They're often drawn to leadership roles, whether in their families, communities, or workplaces. Think of the CEOs, the community organizers, or even the parents who somehow keep everyone on schedule and make it look effortless. But there's a fine line here. The ruler's shadow side comes from their fear of chaos, a fear so deep that their need for control can tip into micromanaging, demanding perfection and silencing others' voices. It's like they're so focused on keeping everything in line according to their plan that they forget what true leadership is really about: empowering others, not controlling them. And then we have their addictive quality, those high control needs. That's when things can really spiral. They become almost addicted to being in charge, to having all the answers. It's a slippery slope, and one that often leads to burnout, resentment, and ironically, the breakdown of the very systems they were working so hard to uphold. For the ruler, the journey is about realizing that true power isn't about domination. It's about collaboration. It's about learning to delegate, to trust in others' abilities, to create a culture of respect and shared ownership. It's about leading with both head and heart, recognizing that the systems that last, the ones that truly work, are built on a foundation of fairness, transparency, and compassion. Without those, the foundation crumbles. So, listeners, as we reflect on the ruler archetype, think about how you navigate those leadership challenges in your own life, whether it's at work, with friends, or within your family. It's all about finding that sweet spot, that balance between structure and freedom, control and surrender. Because true leadership, at its core, is less about wielding power and more about inspiring others to step into their own. Speaking of inspiring, let's talk about the archetype that embodies mystery, magic, and the power of transformation: the magician. The magician sees the interconnectedness of everything and taps into those unseen forces to create. They understand that we're all connected, that our thoughts and beliefs have real power, and that we can manifest our desires into reality. The magician archetype represents that impulse to transform, to heal, and to bring about positive change. They do this through a deep understanding of the laws of the universe, whether drawn to practices like meditation, energy healing, or anything that deepens their connection to something greater. It's all about tapping into a force bigger than themselves. They recognize that we are capable of so much more than we often give ourselves credit for. And that's where their strength lies, in their intuition, in their ability to see past the illusions, and in their unwavering belief in the power of possibility. But as we all know, with great power comes, well, you know how the saying goes. What happens when the magician's shadow side rears its head? That's when we see the fear of misuse of power, the fear of becoming the evil sorcerer. Now, this isn't about actual black magic. It's about their awareness of their own potential for manipulation, for using their gifts for personal gain instead of the greater good. It's a slippery slope. One moment, they're manifesting abundance, and the next, they're using their power to get ahead at any cost. And this is where their addictive quality, dishonesty, comes into play. They might convince themselves that they're acting for the highest good, but deep down, it's ego. It's that need for control, that fear of not being enough on their own merit. They get so attached to this image of themselves as the powerful one, the one in the know, that they lose sight of their own humanity. It's classic spiritual bypassing, and it can be incredibly damaging, both to themselves and the people around them. So how does the magician walk that fine line between light and shadow, between using their power for good and being seduced by their ego? It all comes down to integrity, to constantly check their motivations. Are they acting from a place of love or fear? Are they using their power to uplift others or control them? These are the questions the magician has to keep asking. Because real magic, true magic, isn't about manipulating the outside world. It's about transforming yourself, becoming more loving, more compassionate, and aligning with the highest potential within you. For those of you resonating with the magician archetype, your journey is about wielding your power with humility, with integrity, and with an unwavering commitment to the greater good. So, listeners, feel that magician energy within you. How do you connect with your own inner magic? How are you using your influence, your gifts to create positive change? Because magic isn't just out there, it's everywhere, waiting to be discovered in everyday moments. All you have to do is open your eyes and open your heart, and you'll start to see it. It's about shifting your perception. And now we're nearing the end of our archetype adventure, but we've got a couple more to explore. Let's delve into the archetype that embodies the seekers of truth, the keepers of knowledge, the sage. These are the ones who've, as they say, seen it all. The sage has an insatiable thirst for knowledge, a deep understanding of what it means to be human. They are the mentors, the teachers, the wise counselors offering guidance and perspective based on a lifetime of learning and experience. But you don't have to live on a mountaintop or in a galaxy far, far away to embody the sage archetype. The sage can be anyone committed to seeking truth, to learning, growing, expanding their mind, and most importantly, sharing that wisdom with others. That's where the sage's strength lies, in their ability to see the bigger picture, to connect the dots, and to offer those aha moments to others. They're often drawn to roles where they can teach, guide, and mentor. They share their knowledge to help others make sense of life's complexities. They're the professors, the therapists, the wise elders in our communities who hold space for those deep, meaningful conversations, who listen with their whole hearts. But even the wisest among us have their blind spots, don't they? For the sage, their fear of deception can sometimes lead to judgment and cynicism. They can become so attached to their own knowledge, their own perspective, that they might dismiss or devalue the experiences of others. It's like they've seen and learned so much that they forget we're all on our own paths, that there's no one right way to live or learn. And this is where the addictive quality of judgmentalism can really take root. The sage can become addicted to being right, to proving their intellect, holding themselves above others as if they're the sole keepers of all the answers. It's that fear of being wrong, of having their worldview challenged or dismantled, that can really get in the way of connecting with others, of continuing to learn and grow alongside those they're trying to guide. So, for our listeners who are feeling that sage energy within, how do you walk that line? How do you share your wisdom without falling into the trap of being a know-it-all? Humility. It always comes back to humility. It's about remembering that even as a sage, you are still a student on this journey. There's always something new to learn. Every single person you encounter has something to teach you. It's about approaching life and each other with curiosity, compassion, and the willingness to be wrong. It's about admitting when you don't have the answers, standing in awe of all that you don't yet know. That's where true wisdom lives. In the space between knowing and not knowing, in the willingness to be surprised, to be challenged, and to always remain a student of life. For all of us, no matter which archetype resonates most, there's wisdom to be found here. So, listeners, how do you access your own inner wisdom? Who are the sages in your life, and how have they helped you along the way? Remember, everyone we meet has something to teach us. And now, for our final archetype, let's lighten things up a bit. Let's embrace a little chaos with the fool, the jester, the trickster, the one who reminds us all not to take ourselves too seriously, to find humor, even when life gets tough, because, let's face it, life is too short, right? The fool brings a much-needed dose of levity, of playfulness, encouraging us to loosen our grip and just enjoy the ride. The fool embodies the spirit of spontaneity, of living in the moment, of finding joy in all those unexpected twists and turns that life throws our way. They're the ones who make us laugh, who help us see the absurdity in it all, and who remind us that sometimes the best thing you can do is let go and dance like nobody's watching. Their strength lies in their ability to challenge assumptions, to disrupt the status quo, and to show us that there's always another way of looking at things. They encourage us to break free from rigidity and embrace the unpredictable. But even the fool has a shadow side. What happens when all that lightheartedness takes a darker turn? Their fear of non-aliveness, of boredom, of stagnation, can lead them to do whatever it takes to avoid facing those feelings. It's like they're constantly chasing the next thrill, the next distraction, anything to escape from the mundane, everyday aspects of life. And that's where their addictive quality, inebriation, comes into play. They seek out external sources of stimulation, whether it's substances, risky behavior, or even just being the center of attention. Anything to avoid the quiet moments. It's almost as if they're afraid to be alone with themselves, afraid to face what might come up when things get quiet. The fool's journey is about finding that balance between lightheartedness and staying grounded, between embracing joy and at the same time facing their fears. It's about discovering fulfillment and meaning not just in the external highs, but in the quiet moments of introspection, in those deep connections with themselves and with others. So, If the Fool archetype is calling to you, the challenge is to embrace it all, the light and the shadow, the joy and the sorrow, knowing that it's all part of this grand, messy, beautiful tapestry of being human. As we've explored these 12 archetypes, one thing becomes clear. We all contain multitudes. Each of us is a unique blend of these energies, shifting and evolving as we journey through life. The innocent's optimism, the orphan's quest for belonging, the hero's courage, the caregiver's compassion. All these aspects reside within us, waiting to be recognized and integrated. If there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that it's not about putting ourselves or others into boxes. Instead, it's about understanding how these archetypal energies are at play in all of us. We each have our unique blend, and some archetypes will be more dominant than others. By becoming aware of these energies, we can make more conscious choices, connect with others more deeply, and live more fulfilling lives. So as we wrap up today, we encourage you to keep exploring these archetypes. Observe how they show up in your own life, in the lives of those you love, and even in the books you read or the movies you watch. Remember, this exploration is a journey, not a destination. Keep asking questions and challenge your own assumptions. The power to transform your life and impact society lies within you. Today was a pleasure to guide you through, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Your likes really help the channel grow and reach more people interested in these kinds of video. Also, if you haven't already, feel free to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on our deep dives into other theories and principles that can enhance your life. See you in the next video.